Okay, I have annotated the text and I took a screenshot of it, and FYI, you can insert photos into your mind maps, screenshots of texts, images, whatever. I don't know why you'd want an image, but you can do that. So I can't copy and paste from this, but I can look at it as I'm mapping. Okay, so now I'm looking at the actual argument, and I just wanted to point out something potentially interesting here. So here's our arguable question, the question about which reasonable people could disagree. Would it have been right to remove the infant's organs, thereby causing her immediate death to help other children? Okay, so I've added the question to our map, and the thing that I wanted to point out is that there are two answers here that could be the possible main claim for the map. If we want to put all of the arguments, we've got the benefits argument, the argument that we should not use people as a means, and the argument from the wrongness of killing. If we want to put all of those into a single map, we have to choose one main claim or another, right? A question isn't the main claim. So we would either have yes, it's morally right, or no, it's not. And which one of these things we put at the top of the map is going to affect whether or not the premises and conclusion are green in the basic argument, and then in the continued reasoning and potential objections considered throughout the argument. Point, recap, if we map all three arguments presented in answer to this question as a single map, that affects whether things are green or red. If we separate them out as individual answers, that would be different than if we did them all in one map. What I'm going to do is map them individually so my map doesn't get out of hand, and just to sort of follow the structure of the actual text. Okay, so let's start actually mapping this argument. Each one of these case study arguments begins with a basic argument and then some reasoning and add-on and evaluation. So let's just start with the basic argument. There's a nice clear conclusion indicator word. It's clear that the top is we ought to transplant the organs, and there are two reasons. Or at least there are two sentences. More on that in a moment. Okay, so at a first pass, I have this, and it's clear to me that these are co-premises because this is actually set up to be a very familiar pattern of reasoning that is watertight or airtight. I can't remember which expression we've used. It has the form, if A then B, A therefore B. This pattern of reasoning is so common, it gets a fancy name, modus ponens. And as we can see, we have if. What comes after the if? We can benefit someone without harming anyone else. Then B, we ought to do so. And here's A, transplanting the organs would benefit without harming. Therefore, B, we ought to transplant the organs. So it's set up as a familiar pattern of reasoning that I know is watertight, and it's clear how these premises connect together, that they need each other to provide their support. So if we were to assume that this is not part of the argument, it's false, transplanting the organs actually won't end up helping anyone, then this principle that we ought to do as much good as we can, if we can do so without harming anyone, doesn't support transplanting the organs. It's only if we are assuming that the organs will help and not harm. Okay. So it's definitely co-premises. That was clear to me right off the bat. But I also notice there's actually two parts. The bit A that comes after the if is actually got two conditions. We've got to be able to benefit someone and not harm anyone else, right? So this is called the antecedent of the conditional. It's a two-parter. And this is a two-parter. It is actually a conjunction of two claims. The transplant would benefit without harming. Now, I'm going to take this apart. And one of the things students have asked in class is, when do we need to take things apart and when don't we? don't we? When is it important to unpack that box, and when can we just leave it as one box? And I'll say a bit more about that in a second. Okay, I've separated into two claims because it was two claims, both of which need to be true in order to connect with this principle. And why separate it? Because they're not necessarily equally plausible. Like, there might be reason to object to one rather than the other. So if there's some doubt about the success of transplanting organs, maybe it's a very new field and organs are often not successful, right? So it'll matter how risky and successful these kinds of operations are. And that's a different question from whether or not we're harming baby Teresa. Now, assume that the transplant can be expected to be fairly successful. It's a very likely chance of working. This claim here that transplanting, taking baby Teresa's organs won't harm baby Teresa, that is potentially objectionable. And so somebody might accept this and object to that. And that's why it's worth separating it, so we can be super clear what exactly we're objecting to and represent that visually. The next thing I like to do is visually indicate when I've got a principled claim, right? And if we can benefit someone without harming anyone else, then we ought to do so. That's clearly a principled claim. So I'm going to choose a color, and I happen to just really like lemon chiffon. So I'm going to make all my principles lemon chiffon. Okay, now the author has presented us with this basic argument, and he goes on to consider how anyone hypothetically might respond. So, in this case, he says, we might wonder about the assertion that Teresa wouldn't be harmed. So we're talking about premise 2.3 here. Is that true? After all, she would die, and isn't that bad for her? That's a potential objection, right? So let's add that to the map. Okay, so I've added this in as an objection here. We're objecting to the fact that transplanting won't kill baby Teresa if the stuff in this red bracket is true and provides good support. What it supports is a reason to think this is false, right? So the claim is that, well, transplanting her organs is going to kill her, and to kill is to harm. This one might be so obvious as to not need stating, but it is an important co-premise, and it was explicitly stated. I've reworded it to make it clearer how exactly this undermines the conclusion. Instead of using bad, I used harm. Okay, but now we're going to respond to this. On reflection, it seems clear that in these tragic circumstances, the parents are right. Being alive was doing her no good. Being alive is a benefit only if it enables you to carry on activities and have thoughts and feelings and relationships. In other words, if it enables you to have a life. In the absence of such things, mere biological existence is worthless. Therefore, even though Teresa might remain alive for a few more days, it would do her no good. So how can we capture this reasoning in the argument? So note the therefore. This seems to be the main claim for this little bit of reasoning here. So the claim is that even though Teresa might remain alive for a few more days if we don't remove her organs, it would do her no good. Why think that? Because in the absence of the opportunity to have a real life, activities, relationships, whatever, mere biological existence is worthless, and that's all Teresa has. Okay, I've mapped it, but now the map doesn't want to fully stay in screen, so I'm going to quick go through. Okay, so the claim was we're objecting to transplanting killing baby Teresa, but that'll kill her, and to kill is to harm. And the response is that baby Teresa's life does her no good. Why think that? Claim, being alive is a benefit only if it enables you to carry on activities and have thoughts and feelings. This is basically directly 100% verbatim quote. In other words, if it enables you to have a life. In the absence of such things, mere biological existence is worthless. Now, he didn't say this explicitly, but this is certainly something supported in the facts of the case presented up front. Baby Teresa isn't capable of having a life beyond mere biological existence. So we've got this claim that baby Teresa's life does her no good. Now, how exactly does it fit into the broader argument? It made sense to me to map the original objection is, but of course it kills her. When you take someone's organs, you kill them, and killing is a harm, right? Killing just is. And if I'm going to be objecting here to one of the premises, this, if true, would show that another one is false. Well, I'm not going to claim that transplanting the organs won't kill her, because at least for now, if you've read ahead, there's room to, we're going to object to this later, but that's not the point. We're not saying that she won't be killed. We're saying that it's not a great harm to her to kill her or something like that. So it did seem to make sense to put it here. We're undermining the claim that killing is always harmful to the person killed. All right, so we've got this claim. Why think that? Because her life does her no good. So there must be an implicit co-premise here that might be worth spelling out. Oops, I didn't want to make this implicit. That's not. So co-premise. And I'll leave that to you to spell out. There certainly is one here to connect whether or not killing is harmful to whether or not one's life is no good for them. So it'll be something along the lines of killing is harmful only when you're depriving someone a life that is good for them, or something like that. Okay, so I'm happy with this bit of the argument here. Now, one thing that I like to do is, because what the red bar signifies is that we're following the objection rule, that this gives us a reason to think this is false. Just like with the reason rule in the green bars, this gives us a reason to believe this claim here is true. Now, when you are considering other voices hypothetically, it's sort of unclear where we've ended up. What have we undermined a central claim or what? So what I'm going to do is, when I'm considering another voice in my argument, whether a hypothetical one or from another source, is I'm going to make the boxes a different color. So I'm going to make this hypothetical objection, or, this, maybe it wasn't so hypothetical, it probably was something that came out in the discussion over this. I'm going to make that red, so that way anything that's not red is sort of Rachel's voice, or at least the voice of the person who gave the original argument and is responding to potential objections. It's not clear that that this is his actual claim, because he might be presenting these hypothetically and reasoning through them, but at the same time it seems like he does, he ends by saying the benefits argument therefore provides powerful. It does seem like he does agree with the things he's saying here, and this is the hypothetical part. So I'm going to make that red, and then everything else is Rachel's. Okay, so we've undermined one important part of the claim. And this is the entirety of this first argument here. And if you've read ahead a bit, you'll have seen that there is, after the benefits, there is a we should not use people as means argument, and there's an appeal to the wrongness of killing. So we're going to see a sort of standalone argument that focuses on, well, it's always wrong to kill. So one thing we might see is we could map that as an objection to 3.2 here, or no, it wouldn't be an objection to 3.2, but it would take issue with something in here where they're going to want to say, no, killing is always wrong, not just when it's harmful. Okay, so maybe it'll be to this co-premise that we've spelled in, like it's only harmful to kill or only wrong to kill when you're depriving somebody of a life that does them any good. They might argue like, no, that's not true, it's always wrong to kill. But we're going to treat that as a standalone argument, and that's where we'll consider objections to this premise that whether or not it'll actually kill baby Teresa to take her organs, where we're going to sort of focus on what the definition of death is. But this is good enough for now.